This is Professor Ludlum. This is the Law of International Business Transactions, LS 4533. Today we're going to look through Chapter 9 that talks about the organizations involved in international trade, GATT and the WTO, and some of their concepts. Now, what are we talking about? Trade barriers. The whole idea among all these trade organizations is try to reduce all the impediments to trade, whether they're direct or indirect, whether they're taxes or non-taxes. Anything that's an impediment to trade, we're trying to reduce down to zero, ideally. Remember, we've had the various ways of restricting trade, tariffs, which are taxes, as well as non-tax barriers to trade, embargoes, quotas, and a variety of different ways quotas can be implemented. Historically, we start out with GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, that started in the 40s, right at the end of World War II, and got formalized in 1947. The key for GATT is it doesn't provide individual rights and remedies to parties. So individual cannot move forward based on their violations or someone else's violations of GATT. In 1995, the World Trade Organization replaced GATT. Instead of a general agreement on tariffs and trade that met every so often, WTO created a permanent staff working full-time to implement trade barrier reduction, and have done a remarkable job since 1995. If you're looking for research on international trade, the WTO has a multitude of documents and research reports. So any kind of area you're interested about international trade, they have a huge source of information that's all available. Again, you don't have to purchase. It's not password protected. It's information available for the general public on all kinds of trade-related topics. So any kind of research project you need to do involving world trade, you can use the WTO. What else is important with the WTO? Again, we have a dispute settlement procedures. In other words, formal arbitration between the parties. Again, this is government versus government. So the United States versus Brazil. It will not handle cases that involve, two companies against each other. So Microsoft versus McDonald's, no matter how big the transaction is, it does not handle those. It only handles government versus government complaints. Currently, we're in the Doha round, which strangely enough started in 1994 and was supposed to last 10 years. And so we were supposed to be completed with the Doha round in 2004, but due to problems, mainly because of certain sticking issues that we've had, the process for the Doha round is still ongoing, 10 years delayed. One thing that the GATT and the WTO have tried to do to implement policy changes worldwide is tariffication. In other words, getting rid of quotas, getting rid of barriers, getting rid of embargoes. If there's a country you don't like trading with, instead of an embargo, instead have a tariff on them, a tax. And the idea is when all our restrictions are reduced down to taxes, we can, as a world, get together and say, okay, everyone reduce their tariffs on foreign goods by 10%. Again, with the ultimate goal of having completely free trade among all nations. But as long as everything's in tariffs, it's a financial tax, we can lower and lower and lower that tax to eventually zero. We used to have a concept called most favored nation. It was confusing because of the terminology, because ironically, almost every country on earth had most favored nation status. Now, by the name, you would think most favored nation status, one, maybe two countries have that. Historically, all but about a dozen countries have most favored nation status. And so we've changed the terminology from MFN to normal trade relations. And I think that more reflects the concept. We have normal trading partners, and we have a few folks that we have difficulties with. The last one that people get caught up in, and again, because there's references in the book calling this a remnant of the Cold War, it's still in force. It just applies to very few folks. Jackson-Vanik Amendment rather, says that we will not have most favored nation status with any country that does two things. One, it restricts their people the power to leave, to immigrate with an E, and doesn't have a market-based economy. So any country that does not let its citizens leave freely and does not have a market-based economy, we will not have normal trade relations. Right now, the two countries that stand out that fit that profile are Cuba and North Korea. But of course, politically things change, and tomorrow any country on earth could decide to not let its citizens leave and not have a market economy, and as such the Jackson-Vanik Agreement would apply to them. Again, study hard. There's a lot of vocabulary in this chapter, but keep track of those and watch your deadlines.